Been very busy living out of a suitcase. Travel safe back to Washington. Thank you for the update.
Thanks, Jen.
Well, as Major said, the president will address problems that still exist from Katrina and now the BP oil spill as well. You can watch his speech in its entirety. It will be broadcast live right here on Fox around 3 p.m. Eastern time, so join us for that. 5 years after Katrina tore apart New Orleans, the region is still struggling to rebuild. Trace Gallagher is live in Jackson Square in New Orleans to tell us more. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Shannon. You know, 5 years to the day that Katrina hit, you look at the skies and they're very gray. It's starting to rain again. We've had 2 very steady days of rain here in New Orleans. Maybe Mother Nature's way of kind of weighing in for this anniversary. You know, if you look back to 5 years ago today, there was a brief window after Hurricane Katrina hit that the people here in New Orleans thought they dodged a bullet, right? Because remember, the eye of that storm actually hit along Mississippi. So there were people in the hours after Katrina kind of walking around the French Quarter, looking around, holding their breath to see if everything was okay. And then, of course, we learned the levees had breached. In fact, Phil Keating was one of the first correspondents to announce that. And one of the hardest hit areas, as Major was just talking about, was the 9th Ward. He talked about only 24% of the homes down there now have been rebuilt. Today, there was a tribute, a ceremony in the 9th Ward. It involved California Congresswoman Maxine Waters, Louisiana Senator Mary Landrieu, as well as the mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu, who is all about kind of looking forward for his city. They went up to the 17th Street Canal, which is one of the worst breaches in the lower 9th Ward, and they cast a wreath into the water to commemorate the victims that have been lost. You know, you look over in the aftermath, 1,800 people lost their lives. There was also a tribute today in St. Tammany Parish, another hard-hit area. They threw roses and flowers into the water in Lake Pontchartrain to commemorate those who were lost their homes and lost their lives in that area as well. 80% of New Orleans in the weeks after Katrina was underwater. Even as Major mentioned today, we're talking about Xavier College under for 2 weeks where President Obama is going to speak. And as the rain comes down here, Shannon, in Jackson Square, we have now been told that the ceremony here, it's called Commemoration and Determination, has been moved to a local theater because of the rain. It's a small theater, so not everybody is going to be allowed inside who wanted to get inside. There's some disappointment at that, but we, of course, will have full coverage of that as the ceremonies and commemorations continue here in New Orleans 5 years after Hurricane Katrina. Shannon.
And Trace, we look forward to your special coverage into the evening as well. Thank you very much for the updates.
Okay.
Well, the road to recovery has been a long one for New Orleans, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Patrick Phillips is the CEO of the Urban Land Institute. He joins us now to talk about the progress that's been made and the challenges that are still ahead. Thanks so much for coming in today.
My pleasure, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Well, I thought it was interesting. One of the things that Major Garrett mentioned was in the lower 9th Ward, they lost 5,400 homes. Only 1,300 have come back. How measured do you have to be when you're making decisions about how to rebuild these homes, how to restructure the communities so they're safe next time?
Well, it's critically important. The challenge with the lower 9th is that it's physically the most challenged neighborhood in New Orleans. It's also socioeconomically the most challenged. Those were the poorest people in New Orleans. They were displaced more than any other neighborhood, so they've been slowest to come back. So the challenges are greatest there. If you look across the region, we see that about 90% of the regional population is in fact back, about 75% in the city of New Orleans. So there's a lot that's going really well in New Orleans. The lower 9th remains a struggle.
And right now we want to let folks know you're looking at live pictures of the president and the first family arriving there in New Orleans for his speech he'll give in a couple of hours. He was greeted by Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal. Looks like the mayor is there as well. And I think maybe Congressman Gow is there as well. Part of the contingency meeting him. He will speak at Xavier University after 3 o'clock Eastern time. And again, we're going to carry that live, but you are looking at his arrival there on a sort of a rainy day. Folks, glad to have him there to talk about how we move forward. And let's get back to our guest, Patrick Phillips, about that. I wanted to ask you, so many celebrities have gotten involved. And you think about Brad Pitt, who has expressed his interest and seems to know a lot about architecture, and he's concerned about environmentally conscious rebuilding, those kinds of things. Does it help or hurt when a celebrity comes in and has plans for how they want to help that situation?
I think it's got to help. I mean, it really, yeah, it keeps New Orleans in the news. He's obviously a very popular figure. I think he's very sincere. He's talented. He's been able to marshal the resources to make things happen that wouldn't have otherwise. So I think it's got to be a good thing for New Orleans.
So how do you move forward from here? I mean, what is the future of those folks who are still waiting on a home, maybe who left New Orleans for good? I mean, population centers and even geography change there.
Exactly. You know, and I think there'll be a steady trickle back, but some things we don't really see on the ground, but they're really important. There's been an influx of new people in New Orleans. There's a stronger middle class in the city core. The Latino population influx has gotten a lot of attention. There's a rising number of new students. So there's new talent and new human capital. Small business formation is running 2.5 times as high as it was before the storms. So there's a lot of good things happening from population growth, even though the overall population remains down from before the storm.
Well, 5 years later, it's nice to have some nuggets of positivity to focus on. Patrick Phillips, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Well, FoxNews.com has put together a wealth of information all about the Katrina disaster. For more perspective on where things stand 5 years later, just log on to FoxNews.com. You can click on Hurricane Katrina 5 years later and check out our slideshow. It's got a day-to-day summary of how the storm developed and everything that happened there in the aftermath.